So we were discussing about the principle of prevention. It actually leads us to the sustainable development. So if you can check it here, if possible at source and by means of risk reduction, so as to achieve sustainable use of the environment, providing care for the assets at stake. So this is the ultimate goal which we are going to achieve, and for this purpose we need to have a sustainable development related to any kind of production or process, both. Second principle is related with polluter pays. So that means we uh, ensure a penalty equal to the amount of the pollution which is caused by some individual or by some industry. So this is the allocation as a fundamental allocation of costs, but not automatically as also as a principle of allocation of responsibility. So in this case we are dealing with the cost of pollution as well as the responsibility. Cost incurred to avoid, remove and compensate damage should be allocated to the party responsible. For any kind of pollution, it has an impact on the environment and on the health. To get rid of that in negative impact, there must be some measures taken to reduce the interaction of that pollution with the humans and the environment. So if it is not being done, we have to allocate the responsibility to the party who is responsible for that, and also allocate the penalty for that negligence, and that cost is actually equal to the cost of the health which is being affected, and it is also equal to the impact on environment which is being affected. So both cases we have to define the intensity of the loss of the damage and to the pollution to the environment, and then on that basis the polluter or the industry has to pay equal amount as a penalty. Then we have the principle of cooperation. I think it's quite simple. Means that the care of the environment is a common task, and every person, not only the society, not only the state, but also the society has its own share, which will be in terms of caring for the environment and nature both. In the relationship between state and society, participation of those involved is designed to improve environmentally significant decision making and facilitate acceptance without blurring the distinction in the areas of responsibility of the three powers of legislative, executive and judiciary, and also taking account of the principle of democracy and the rule of law. So this is something about the development of laws based on the cooperation. So some laws must be on the side of the society, some things which must be done by the society to have its share in the have its cooperation in dealing with the pollution. So now we will talk some of the principles of international law, and this will be including the principle of state sovereignty and the territorial integrity. It is particularly important when we talk about the air pollution, especially if you have an idea about the CO2 emissions overall, and how much emissions are done by any kind of industry, and in which area it is present. It must be understood that it is very fastly transferred from one area to the other area, because air is the fastest mode of transport of the pollution. So if there is a source of pollution across the border in other country, it has its impact on Pakistan as well. So that's why we must understand the what is the principle of international law. The most important is the state sovereignty and its integrity. We have to defend our integrity at any cost, and it should not be allowed that the pollution from the other countries are having a negative impact on Pakistan as well. So we must have some rules based on this principle as well. So we can discuss it in detail as well, because it is very important one. And specifically when we are talking about ozone layer depletion and the and those and the emissions of those pollutants from the industry which are having an impact on the ozone depletion, which country is having more share, all these things are being considered nowadays on global forums, and thus it led us to the Kyoto Protocol, in which all the major countries participated, and they defined some rules and regulations. So it is again a long top, topic of discussion which needs more detailed discussion. We will do it later, but just for the sake of introduction, this is a very important principle, which is state sovereignty and territorial integrity. Then we have shared natural resource. Most of the time our water resources are shared with other countries, so there must be some rules and regulations how we are going to deal with it. Like our water resources are shared with our neighboring countries, and that's why we have some of the uh, 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 we have some authorities which are going to regulate, and we also have some kind of agreement with our neighboring countries, which are based on which we are dividing our water resources. Then we have some concept of common heritage of mankind, which are naturally existing sources which cannot be ignored and separated. So then we have some obligation of state to cooperate, inform and consult. So this is also one of the basic principles based on which we are developing our international environmental laws. So transboundary movements of hazardous waste is to be considered, particularly on preference. And then we have some market based approaches for environmental policy and international law, in which we must consider what kind of pollution one country is creating to develop something. So for example, automobile industry is having a major source of contamination to so many pollutants. So how we can reduce and eliminate it, if it is going to be on the basis of a business based sharing, and how we can share that load with the other countries, So again, it is a market-based instrument to develop laws. So environmentally related taxes, charges and subsidies, emission trading, and deposit refund systems, environmental labeling laws, economic property rights. So if you have an idea about ISO 14000, it is more relevant with the this kind of environmental law development. So basically ISO 14000 is the tool with which we are going to regulate our environmental laws. So these are the laws which will be regulated by the ISO 14000 implementation. So we have some trading schemes. European Union's emission trading scheme is an example, and some greenhouse gas emissions are another example. These are the sources. These are those mechanisms through which we will be regulating our trade. So if you just consider one factor, that based on the ISO 14000 we have implemented the EMS system, and we have implemented the environment wastewater treatment plants in our industry, just in order to prevent our environmental assets. So just to fulfill the requirements, international requirements, we have adopted this level of ISO 14000, which includes so many things: documentation, labeling, auditing, and then treatment plants, and then solid waste management, wastewater management. All these are falling under that ISO 14000, just in order to continue our trade with other countries of the world. So ISO 14000 we will discuss in detail. EIA we will discuss in detail. These are the regulatory instruments with the help of which we are going to implement our international environmental laws. So this is something which will be discussed in detail in coming lectures. So that's all for today. Please go through it, and I hope we can discuss in our class. Thank you so much.